Hi, good morning, Year 10. So your work for this week was to look at 7.1 and the revision questions attached to it. So the whole focus of 7.1 is introducing your topic 3 and looking at ecosystems and biomes and where they are distributed. So this week's task was a combination of written exam questions in this PDF style and then also your Seneca Learning. Just a quick note with the Seneca Learning, really well done to those students who completed all of that. I know some of you had encountered some technical issues, so well done for overcoming them as well. I noticed on there are a number of students who have continued with that Seneca Learning revision. Please feel free, particularly at a time like this where you might have a little bit more time on your hands. You might find it useful to go back and revisit some of the topics that we have looked at previously. In this slide, or in these slides, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through some examples of answers and work and kind of talk you through them. So you started originally with the geographical exam skills or geography exam skills. In your exams next summer, you will have explain questions, figure-based questions, evaluate questions, and assess questions. The three main things you need to remember is PEAL, point, evidence, explanation, link, PEAK, pattern, evidence, anomaly, and key, and then PEJE, point, evidence, judgment, explanation. This set of questions really only used explain and focused on the explain command word. The memory retrieval questions, true or false? I'm just going to run through them now. Boreal forests have long summers and short winters. That is false. It is the opposite way round. Their winters are much longer than their summers. Precipitation is high in the tundra biome, also false. This is because the tundra biome is known as one of the largest deserts, so it is a dry region. Tropical rainforests are hot all year round, true, if we think of somewhere like the Amazon rainforest that you studied in year 9. Temperate climates often have deciduous vegetation, true. You have here a number of tree species that lose their leaves due to the seasonality of the temperatures. So question B was looking at what type of vegetation do you expect to see in the desert? And what I really like about this answer is obviously they've done it, none or dried shrubs and grasses, but then when they came back to their review of their work, they've said actually it's not none, there is small amounts of vegetation, and that vegetation is often cactuses. Tropical grasslands have wet and dry seasons. How does this affect the soil? So again, this answer has looked to improve. So during constant rainfall, nutrients are washed away. However, moderate rainfall helps vegetation to grow. During very dry weather, soils can become hard and less fertile. Dry seasons also have some plants bring nutrients back to the soil. So as it kills the plants, those plants then decompose back into the soil, adding nutrition. So tropical grasslands have extreme wet and extreme dry seasons, meaning that the ground and the soil has to get used to these extremes. So on with the exam style questions. These are taken directly from an exam paper. So 1A, define the term biodiversity. Really easy, really quick way of getting 1 mark. 1B, you had to identify country X, and it was India. In the exams, they'll give you quite well-known and countries that you should have studied. They're not going to have an arrow pointing to somewhere in Central Europe and say label country Y, and it turns out it's going to be Liechtenstein. They label countries that you have been exposed to during your geographical education. Abiotic, non-living parts, and then the examples there, rock, soils, climate. Really simple, really easy. It's all of the bits that have never been living. This answer has gone back. So this is the biotic, so living or alive components of an ecosystem, animal, fungi, plants. Really quick questions, and a really quick way in an exam you could actually get 4 marks. These types of questions exist, so if you are aware of all those different key terms and some of the key points attached to it, then it's a really quick way of collecting those marks. Question 3 was looking at explain how latitude affects temperature and precipitation. So if I was to answer this question in an exam, what I would do is I would bug the question. So I'd box the command word, which is explain. I'd then underline the key points and factors. So the big thing we're looking at here is latitude. Latitude, as we know, is distance from the equator, north or south. So our equator is at 0 degrees. We then go all the way up to the North Pole, which is 90 degrees north in the furthest extreme. We then go all the way down to the south, which is 90 degrees south of the South Pole. So this answer for temperatures answered it really well. The closer you are to the equator, the warmer it is. Point. Latitude affects temperature as the further away from the equator it is, the colder you get. Explanation. They've then gone on to give a specific example. So the poles are the coldest with a high latitude. The equator is the hottest with the low latitude. So they've really clearly there got 2 marks for that first point. Precipitation then. High latitudes means less precipitation. The amount of precipitation air can hold largely depends largely on temperatures, meaning there is more towards the equator. Due to warmer weather, more water is taking up. And I think one thing that would be great to add here is at the end, through evaporation. So you're using key terms. Second question is again done something similar. So latitude affects temperatures. Different latitudes receive different levels of sunlight and heat from the sun. This is due to the shape of the Earth. Because the Earth is curved, it means that sunlight radiation doesn't hit each part of the Earth equally, with the equator receiving the highest amount of solar radiation, meaning it's hotter. Near the equator, it is warmer, as the sun's rays are at a high angle in the sky all year round, whereas latitude increases, it becomes colder due to less sunlight reaching the ground. As a result, different latitudes create different temperatures due to the Earth being a sphere shape. Latitude affects precipitation as different latitudes there are areas of high and low pressure, which causes different levels of rainfall. In areas of low pressure, there is high rainfall, and in areas of high pressure, there is low rainfall. Latitude affects precipitation by creating different levels of pressure, which creates different levels of rainfall. This mark here would very easily get 4 marks. In fact, I could say this answer would even be able to write less and still get 4 marks. I can imagine the person who wrote this, it took them longer than 4 minutes to write, and often we say a good indicator is 4 minutes a mark. I've included about this answer here is that the student has obviously misunderstood the question or not known what to write. So what they have done is they've put question marks and put little points, and then they've added their answer in afterwards. So this is the perfect example of a student who's gone, do you know what, I'm not actually sure what the answer is. And this is revision, and that's fine if you don't know the answer at this stage. We'll be revising this again when we go back to school. They've then gone back, reviewed their work, and decided actually, this is what I want to include, and this is what I would include. Finally, then, question 4. Explain how altitude affects ecosystems. Again, with this question, I would bug it. So box the command word explain. How altitude, I would underline, affects ecosystems. So altitude, at this stage, I would probably add a little arrow coming out of there and just remind myself what altitude is. So altitude is distance from sea levels. So this answer here, altitude affects ecosystems as different altitudes have different temperatures. As temperature decreases when altitude increases, point. Evidence, which is shown from the fact that temperature drops 6.5 degrees for every 1,000 metre increase in height. As plants need warmth to live and grow, it means different altitudes will have different amounts and types of plants, which also affects what animals can live there and therefore affects the ecosystem in the area. A fantastic example of a PEEL paragraph, so a PEEL paragraph. Point, evidence, explanation, and then link back to the question. This question then receives its second second set of PEEL marks. As well as altitude, as well as this, altitude also affects the system as different altitudes also have different landscapes and steepness. Usually higher altitudes have steeper relief as many of these areas are mountainous. This affects what plants and trees can grow, as some vegetation would struggle to grow on a steep mountainside, but would grow much easier on a smoother, less steep landscape, which in turn affects the animals that can live there, therefore affecting the ecosystem. Again, this is looking at the type of relief of the land and actually how relief can impact vegetation and animals. Another thing with altitude and steep relief, it often can lead to local factors where you see bogging or flooding of certain areas because the water is running down because of gravity. We know water runs down. So those exam style questions were just there to give you a bit of a review about the work that we have done. So well done for those students who have done it and completed it.